All right, it's time for Yogi and the BeachMan. Hi, I'm Jim the Yogi.
And I'm Rick Beach the BeachMan.
We're two Michigan transplants now living in Southwest Florida.
In fact, we're cousins born in 1964, just a month apart.
I like to meditate.
And I like to play bass in a band.
I'm into chanting Om.
And I'm into throwing down some classic rock.
But together, we're on a mission
to promote people that are helping other people.
We want to make the world a better place.
One conversation at a time.
So sit back,
turn up the volume,
and get ready to laugh.
Because we like to have fun
while we spread the love.
Interviewing lovely people. Yes, we have fun.
I'll still go skydiving.
I want to do that.
I don't know about
Have you done it?
Yeah, I've been, I think 3 or 4 times I've been skydiving.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been itching to do that.
It's great. Yeah, they have. I went to twice in Florida.
Okay.
One in Lake Wales, and then one, I think another place was a little closer to Sarasota.
Yeah, I was looking to a place when I was in Tampa in Zephyr Hills.
Yeah.
And I think they've got it. We're in Port Charlotte. I think they have locations around here as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there's a small airstrip out in Arcadia that they do it out of. There's a few within 45 minutes or so.
It's great, man. I mean, it's so intense, of course, when you jump out, which is exciting and wonderful.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people don't realize after you pull the parachute, it's just complete peace. It's just silent, and you can see forever. And it's like the first time I went, I was like in my mid to late 20s or something, and I was not in a good place in my life and hadn't been for a long time. And I jumped out, and after we pulled the parachute, I felt this feeling in my chest, and I remember going like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's peace." Like, it's just, I hadn't experienced peace since I was a little kid, I was like, "Oh my God, I think I'm at peace. Like, this is nice."
I had that feeling in my first yoga class, and I was hooked.
There you go. That's where we find it. That's the ultimate, is finding that connection and that peace.
Welcome back to Yogi and the BeachMan. This episode, we are with Glenn Ambrose. He's a spiritual advisor and the host of the podcast, Life Lessons and Laughter. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you, Glenn. I'm Rick.
Yeah, happy to have you on the show. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
My pleasure.
So you've been podcasting for 10 years?
Yeah, it's got to be around there, right around 10 years.
That is pretty awesome. We're coming up on a year, so we're kind of the newbies.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's a great way to get the message out there, reach a lot of people, and it's served my business pretty well over the years.
Yeah, how did you get into podcasting? Just to grow the business, or?
I never do anything on purpose. It's just everything that really works out well kind of falls into my lap. So I was working on my business, and a friend of mine was into podcasting. Well, he was wanted to get into podcasting. He was into lots of that type of stuff. So him and his business partner started a podcast, and they said, "Hey, you want to be a guest? I think you'd be a good guest." So I said, "Sure." So I went down, we recorded an episode, and afterwards they were like, "That was really good. You need your own podcast." And I was like, "Oh yeah? Like what?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's easy, no problem. We'll set it up for you, and and produce it and all this stuff." And I was like, "Okay." So they just set me up. I started doing it. I didn't even really know what a podcast was or who was going to reach, but I started doing it. And then I don't know, maybe a year or two later, my business I had a life enhancement center. So when I first started out, I had been a personal trainer for a lot of years. So I was still doing some personal training for income as I grew my life coaching and Reiki and spiritual advising, that type of stuff. So after a year and a half or so, I was like, okay, it's time to transition my business. I don't really like doing all these events. I was doing a lot of events and I didn't want to be an event planner.
Hmm.
So I kind of reshaped my business and downsized, and I kept everything that I liked. It was just that simple. So when it came to the pot, so I did spiritual advising and one or two other things, and then I came to the podcast and I said, "Do I want to keep doing this? Nobody's listening. Like, nobody was listening to the podcast or anything."
How far
But
in was this?
this was um, probably about a year, six
Okay.
months to a year.
Yeah.
And and I said, yeah, but it's fun. I enjoy it. It's joyful for me. So I'm going to keep doing it. So I did it. And then about 6 months later, I came across Insight Timer. I was looking for literally a timer for my meditations. And I came
Hmm.
across this app called Insight Timer. And I started scrolling through, and they had lots of different things, not just meditations on there. So I was like, oh, I wonder if I could put my podcast on there. So I messaged them and they said, sure, here's the process, do it like this. So I started uploading my podcast, and then all of a sudden I had a global audience, you
Wow.
know,
How cool is that?
and people that were interested in spirituality. So my message was resonating with people. People started reaching out for my services, and really that's when my business took off. So it was all just by chance.
That's very
And
cool.
and of course taking action when necessary.
Or
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
or destiny. You kind of look at it, I look at things like there's just a plan that happens, and sure, your decisions, if you're constantly making the right choices, you'll go down that path and end up with good things.
Right. Yeah. I lived 20 years very dysfunctionally, as an alcoholic and a crazy person, and couldn't get out of my own way. And then when I woke up spiritually after that, it's just been night and day. It's been a completely different way of interacting with life and more going with it and taking action when I feel those nudges. And then with no attachment to the outcome. I don't know what's going to work out, what's not going to work out.
Hmm.
But if I get that nudge, I'll just follow up a little, put some energy towards it, and what's meant to be falls into place, you
Yeah.
know.
I'm always curious about people's spiritual awakening. Can you tell me about yours?
Yeah, mine was through recovery. I was on death's doorstep. My body was shutting down and homeless, and the real low bottom. And
And how old were you at the time?
uh 30 35. I think it was 35, right around my
Wow.
35th birthday.
So it's really about the time when your friends and other people, your peers had wife, kids, house, and you're just kind of flailing in the wind.
Yeah, well, it started when I was 30, and it was just what you just said. It was like when I turned 30, like it was really a hard time for me because in my 20s, you're young, you're wild, you're crazy. Well.
Yeah.
So that was my identity. So I was kind of used to it. And then I was turning 30, and something had started happening in my brain where I was going like, you're not a kid anymore. Now you're just a loser. Like, you were having fun in your 20s and screw life and rebel and all this stuff. But now, like, you're 30, and yeah, your kids, all the guys you grew up with have successful businesses, and they're getting married and having kids. And it was the contrast grew. So it was harder for me to rationalize my behavior.
Hmm.
So I pulled myself together. I met a girl who talked a good game, got married, had a kid, bought a house, started my personal training business, pulled myself together as much as I could. And that was really the beginning of the end, because like when you're dysfunctional, you kind of expect to be unhappy, you know, like that's kind of part of the gig. You're a tortured soul, you drink, you party, screw life. So there's a certain level of unhappiness you kind of expect with that identity. But now I had done everything that life told me to do. That was I was going to be happy and content and peaceful and living this responsible, good life. And once I had done it, I was like, I'm more unhappy than I was when I just accepted being a loser. Like, this is not good. Then I started questioning if happiness even existed at all, and 2 years into the bottle and separating from my wife, her moving to Rhode Island. I was in Florida in Bradenton or Sarasota at the time. Yeah, I spiraled for 2 years, and then I just wanted to die at that point, really, really bad. And I just didn't have the energy to go on another 5, 10 years like this. So I had tried suicide before, so I kind of knew that you have to be really committed to actually do it. So I sat there, and what I found out when I was honest with myself was I don't think I was really going to do it because there might be another way. I had been exposed to recovery a little bit, and I didn't believe in it, but it was possible. So I didn't have a clean conscience to really take my life. So I decided to give it 110%. Cool. It probably won't, but if it doesn't, then I'll have a clean conscience to end my life. And I dove in with that attitude, and I gave it 110% because it says I was in AA.
Okay.
So I was an alcoholic. I went to AA, and it says the thing that caught my attention was it says half measures avail us nothing. So if you do it halfway, you don't get half the results. You get nothing. You do it 90% of the way, you don't get 90% of the results. You get nothing. So I kind of understood giving it everything through growing up playing sports and stuff like that. So I just went in with the attitude that I need to give this 110% because I can't lie to myself when it comes to taking my own life. If I gave it 99%, I'm going to know I gave it 99%. I'm not going to have the ability to follow through with taking my life. And then I'm going to have to start all over again. And I don't have the energy for that. I'm like, it either needs to work or I need to die, period. Those are the only two options I was accepting. So, it forced me to give it 110%, even in difficult parts I didn't want to. And I went through the 12 steps in about a 3-month period, being guided through and really in detail and hard work. And another thing it says is you will be amazed before you're halfway through. And after I did my 5th step, I had a couple little awakenings, but after I had my 5th step, I just started blowing open. And within 3 months, I'd walk into a room and people would see me like 2 cafeteria lengths away and be like, what happened to you? Like, what's up? Like I was just emanating this like light or something. People, I don't know what people saw, but they could see something had changed in me.
Some good energy.
Distance. Yeah. So, so people started coming over and going, what did you do? Like, what? I want whatever the heck you have. So
like, I'm working the program, do the program.
Well, I've never been to an AA class, but I know that they do put a big emphasis on Christianity and higher power, stuff like that. Is that correct? And how did that?
No, like no? They don't put. That's kind of why they say higher power is to not put an emphasis on Christianity.
Okay.
That's why they came up with that term, because actually one of the founders, and I've studied the book. I was very involved for about 8 years. I haven't been to meetings in like 12 or 13 now, but I know a lot about the program from my past. And the founder, when he first, right before he got sober, a friend came and talked to him, and they had this very Christian slanted way of recovery back then, called the Oxford groups. And he comes in, starts talking about God, and Bill W., one of the founders, his brain just shut off because he was like, okay, this dude's cracked on religion, whatever. I'll have some drinks, we'll reminisce and waste the day.
Yeah.
Right.
So when they created the program, they specifically laid it out with that in mind, saying that people have preconceived conceptions about God and Christianity, and we don't want that to be a hindrance in their recovery.
Yeah.
So, but really, to me, the 12 steps is it's not that it's going to work for everybody, but it's a very unique program because it's a action plan to induce a spiritual awakening.
Hmm.
Like, where else do you find that? Like like
Yeah.
literally, you do this, you do this, you do this, and your spirit blows open. Like, that's really the purpose of the program. And
I
even a lot of people that have done it aren't aware of that.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the book. I've got really good friends that are in AA, and they've been active for decades, and they volunteer and help. They run the help run the hotline and take calls. And um, one of them recently visited us here in Port Charlotte, and she was telling us about the book. You want to share a little bit about that since you mentioned it?
Yeah, I mean, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, to me, is one of the most spiritual texts ever written. I mean, it's up there with the Bible and the Quran and, like all the other religious Taoism and the Tao Te Ching and stuff like this. It's just because the way I went through it was underline this, circle this. This is what this means. Write this in the margin. This is what this means. And I was taught the program.
Hmm.
And then after that, I started doing it. So I started teaching. So I taught it to groups and individuals for like 8 years. So I've been through that book many times. And every time I went through it, there was something more. Since I'm a spiritual teacher, I'm not just sticking to the AA aspect of it. I'm like, do you understand I get all jazzed up. So I'm like, I can't skip over these spiritual gems. So like I went through it in like 3 months. After the years of me teaching it, adding more things, it was taking me at least 6 months, sometimes closer to 8, to get through the process because there's just so much spiritual depth in that book, if you
Hmm.
if you understand it. So I mean, to me, AA saved my life. The program blew me open spiritually. Absolutely amazing. Highly recommend. Wonderful, right? But
Yeah.
then at 8 years, I started feeling a pull away from it. And it turned out because I was supposed to be working with everybody, not just
Mm.
alcoholics, you
Okay.
know, and
Yeah.
addicts.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking you were going to mention the Course in Miracles when you were mentioning these sacred texts because I noticed the quote on your Facebook page. Did you do the Course in Miracles as well?
I did portions of it.
Okay.
I did. Yeah, I didn't do the whole thing. It
It's
was
pretty hard to
by
get
the
through the whole
time,
thing.
well, yeah, a year, right? It's
Yeah.
365. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just by the time I had come across the Course in Miracles, I had kind of learned most of what it was teaching. And
Okay.
it's like I went through a period after I got sober that I devoured information for like five
Hmm.
years.
Yeah.
I couldn't get in enough. And I was never really a reader before that. And then after that, it just shut off. Like I still to this day have a hard time getting through a book
Hmm.
and taking in information. A lot of it is like, a plumber coming home and learning how to, fix a toilet. Like he's not, like he knows that already. So most of the
Yeah.
information I already know, and it's just going over it in other ways.
Hmm.
It's just not really, it doesn't pull me as much
I totally get that. Yeah.
so that it was kind of like that with the Course in Miracles. And I was getting the
Hmm.
emails, and there was a lot of explanation before it got to the gem.
Yes. Yeah.
And you throw a little ADHD in there, and I want the gem. So so I didn't finish it, but I'm I'm a big proponent of it. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And I think that the information is some of the most pure spiritual truths that come out like that quote.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What besides the book really moved you along spiritually?
Um, Eckhart Tolle in the beginning.
Okay. Yeah.
Oof, my God, that was kind of my big transition from AA into mainstream spirituality, the broader perspective, the
Hmm.
whole lot, not just treating a disease, but just the, opening up to all of our existence. And so I listen to the power of now in my car, like for a couple of years over and over until I understood all of it and
Yeah.
started following other teachers. And, like that 5 years, I was oof, such a student. I was just absorbing and understanding and learning to, like, when I woke up originally spiritually in those first 3 months, I basically, for lack of a better explanation, I kind of opened up conceptually to everything, like the
Hmm.
mysteries of the universe, everything. Now, I didn't understand them intellectually, and I hadn't implemented them physically yet. And to me, those are the three parts. We have to really change who we are and how we interact with life. There's intellectual, conceptual, and physical. So we have to intellectually understand things. That's usually where people stop because that's what we've been taught in school. Like if you understand something and you can regurgitate it back in your own words, you got it. But that's not how spirituality works. It's not deep enough to actually shift us.
Hmm.
So I believe we have to get things conceptually. That's when you've heard something 10 times and then all of a sudden somebody says it again or possibly in a different way and you go, oh, like now I really get it.
That aha moment.
Yeah, that aha
Yeah.
moment. And if you pay attention, you feel that in your body. You feel that in your chest or your torso usually. You don't feel that in your brain because
Yeah.
it's not intellectual. It's a body understanding. It's a conceptual understanding. And then we actually have to stand in that new behavior in a physical life experience because we're vibrational beings, we're energy. So to shift our vibrational rate within our energy body, we actually have to, like let's say we turn to anger and then all of a sudden we have this epiphany where, love is the answer. Well, then the universe is going to give us an opportunity to stand in that within 2 weeks,
Yes.
what I found
Yeah.
and with my clients. So then you actually have to choose the new behavior that you had the epiphany about, interact in a real life situation with it. And that's what really shifts our physical vibration. And then we start becoming the new version of ourselves.
Yeah. You really have to integrate those teachings and learnings. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people right now with the information age, they're just addicted to information, and if they're not happy, they think that they haven't learned the right thing. So they go listen to another podcast or read another book, or it's not, it's very simple, you know, it's implementation
Hmm.
is what most people are lacking. The more we implement what we learn, that's where the real shift's going to come.
Yeah, it's works, not words.
Right.
You can always talk the good game and the bullshit, but what it comes down to is walking the walk. And it's hard for a lot of people, including myself, to, keep yourself accountable. That's why I've always found you have to tell somebody, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And like, for example, with this podcast with JP, he holds me accountable. He's makes sure I'm here all the time. And so I think, and even when you're talking about doing things that are going to make yourself better and a more spiritual being and get happier overall, to take those steps and implement them, not everyone has the self-discipline to do it and hold on to it. I find that I'm that guy. I don't. So I have to throw it out there to somebody and to basically hold myself accountable for that stuff. Did
But
you have an
that's,
issue with that when you were first started down that road?
um, not really, because I blew open. I've had problems with it later on in my journey, just not in the beginning because I was so open. Like, I'd get stuck in traffic on the way to work selling cell phones 20 years ago. And, I'd show up to work and I'd walk in and be like, hey, did you get caught in that traffic? They'd be like, oh my God, yes, it was a nightmare. I'm like, oh, and I thought it was wonderful. Like I was just sitting there and I was practicing being at peace and contented. And people are like, what is wrong with you? I was just blown so open. The first girl I dated was like Glenn, you're a really interesting and nice person, and you know, it was really nice getting to know you, but I think you need some practice talking to normal people. And I'm like, what? Okay, sure. This is wonderful. Thank you. You know, like I was just so out there that like I needed to get my feet back on the ground and learn to and take these spiritual principles and learn to interact with them in a real life way. Um, you know, because I'd blown open conceptually and I just
Mhm.
was floating around. So yeah, it took me a while to get my feet back on the ground. But you know, accountability is gigantic. And I think the biggest thing is not so much like um what our problem is. Like, oh, I have a problem holding myself accountable. So, like lots of people do. That's not a big deal. The big deal is that you recognized it and then you do what it takes to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Like, well, I'm not good at holding myself accountable, so I need somebody to hold me accountable, or I need to tell somebody, and you do that. And that's what's going to serve you. You know, I think a lot of people spend a lot of time not growing because of things like that. They judge themselves and they go, well, I should be able to motivate myself. It's like, yeah, but you're not. Your ass has been on the couch for 2 freaking years. You're miserable. You're not doing anything. So should be able to motivate yourself isn't really working. If you can't motivate yourself and you need somebody to hold you accountable, find somebody to hold you accountable. You
Yeah.
know, don't
No,
sit
for
there
sure.
spending 2 years judging whether you should be accountable or whether you shouldn't be accountable. You know, like just if you have a problem, find a solution for it, you
Yeah.
know, and that's what moves you forward.
So what type of people are coming to you for help for your spiritual advising, and how do you start with them? Like, I mean, what's the assessment process on somebody that wants spiritual advisement?
Well, that's actually where my podcast helps a lot because most
Okay.
people that come to me come through the podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
my podcast is I've worked very hard at being authentically me.
Yeah.
So what that does is it allows people that are going to gel with me to be able to find me. If
Okay.
I'm busy trying to do a show to connect with certain people or be who what they think I should be, then I'm going to attract a lot of the wrong people.
Yeah, that
And
makes
the
sense.
ones that could really connect with me aren't going to be able to find me because I'm not out there. So I'm just very much myself and very much authentic. And what that does is it sends that when somebody's listening to my podcast, like when I hear see the negative comments and people like this podcast sucked because of this, because of that, because of this. What I'm reading is they shouldn't be listening to my podcast because of this, because of this, because
Yeah.
like because I'm not going to change how I'm doing my podcast because it's me and the people who jive with the way that I deliver information.
Mm-hmm.
When they're listening, they're like, "Oh my God, I really like the way this guy delivers the information." And that's the best test to find your teacher. Does it
Yeah.
resonate with you the way that he delivers information? Does it connect with it? Does it give you those aha moments? If yes, then the right teacher for you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So when people come to me, generally they know two things. One, that my style resonates with them, and two, three things. Two, that I'm down to earth. You know, I'm not floating around all this. I'm very straightforward, down to earth, practical stuff that can change your life. And I'm deep. Like there's no BS. Like we don't sit around for 45 minutes talking about listening to people complain about what's going wrong in their life. It's, you know, like, do I need a little bit of information? Sure. But most people are caught up in the details. I don't need the details. I just need to understand what's going on underneath them, and we can get right into the solution. You know, so people who are in very rarely do I get anybody that wants to dance around the surface of spirituality. People are either ready to do the work or they're not. And if
Mm-hmm.
they're not ready to do the work, if they listen to my podcast for a little while, they're going to be like, they're not going to like it because I hold people accountable. I push. I I kind of do spiritual punch in the face. It stings at first, but it's going to make you grow faster and stronger and better if you stay open to it. And the people who are really ready to expand their spirituality are ready for that. They can feel it. And those are the ones that reach out. So my assessment process is done before they even come to me. Once somebody comes to me, I already know that they like my style
Yeah.
and that they're most likely ready to do the work. So we just dive right in, session one, and start lighting it up.
And what's your definition of spirituality? Because I think if you asked 5 different random people, you'd probably get 5 different random answers.
Yeah, I agree. I think to me, like when I first woke up spiritually, in recovery, they say go back and look at the religion of your upbringing through new eyes and see if it's right for you. And I did that, and it wasn't. I was raised Catholic outside of Boston, and I
Hey, I'm a
was like,
recovering Catholic too.
ah, there you go. So yeah, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s where all the altar boy stuff was going on, and some of my friends got caught up in that. So I had some resentments, and so like I had all that, and I was like, okay, no, that's not it. So I started looking into other religions, and as I started studying each of them, I realized that I was saying no to them quicker. And I was like, okay, why? Am I being lazy? Like, and what I saw was that each religion has dogma, man-made dogma on the top of it. And anything man-made is fallible, just like man, and changes over time because it's temporal. So I was like, I couldn't fully give my heart to any of those because there were certain issues I had with each of them. So I was like, okay, I don't think I'm going to find a religion that I'm wholeheartedly involved in. And then I kind of saw like this river of deep spiritual truth that flowed underneath all of them, that they were all the principles that they were all built off of underneath the dogma. And I was like, that's my jam. Like, that's what I like. I like just straight spiritual truth. I don't want the dogma. I don't want it explained to me. I just want the straight spiritual truth, and I want to connect to the principles of love that underlie all of the religions. So to me, that's what spirituality is.
Well, give us a good punch in the face. What's a deep spiritual truth that would just hit us?
I mean, usually the go-to is non-attachment to the outcome, but it's much more of a punch in the face if I'm talking with somebody that's in the middle of resistance to that.
That makes sense.
And they don't want to see it,
Yeah.
like when somebody doesn't want to see something and they're rationalizing their behavior and they're really not saying the truth, and then all of a sudden you're attached to an outcome. Like, let's just say, for a real life example, like somebody is lending money to a family member that is really dysfunctional, and they're just enabling them to continue their poor behavior. Like I might say, like, okay, well, you're giving conditionally, not unconditionally. Oh, no, no, no. My heart's open. I just want to help. I want to be a good person. I love them. I'm trying to help them. It's no, 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 no. And it's like, no, you're like, so if you give them money and they don't behave in the way that you want them to behave, you get upset. So you have a condition on what you're giving. So that's a form of an attachment to an outcome. And people don't like seeing that. They want to be the good person. No, you don't understand. They're the problem. I'm helping. I just want to help them. It's like, yeah, but you're not helping them. You're enabling them to continue with poor behavior because you're sheltering them from experiencing the consequences of poor decision making. And that's how they're going to learn. And you're preventing them from learning by preventing them from experiencing the negative consequences of their actions. And you have an attachment to your giving, and you weren't even courteous enough to let them know. When you gave them $100, you weren't even courteous to say, okay, I'm going to give you this $100, but you got to behave in the way that I want you to.
Yeah. Don't spend it on your vice.
Yeah. So it's stuff like that people aren't really, they're rationalizing their behavior that they're not seeing, and then all of a sudden you kind of, hey, that's the actual reality of the situation. And at first they're like, no, 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 you know.
Yeah. So it's almost like some people don't even see it. They don't even realize that they're having these conditions attached to it.
Oh yeah, nobody does. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why awareness is so powerful. I mean, people don't run around living dysfunctional lives because they want it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They do it because they don't know better. And that's one of the things that was one of the primary things my sponsor said to me before he took me through the steps is did you destroy your entire life? And I was like, yeah, I think so. So you didn't miss any areas. I'm like, no, my son's 1,400 miles away. I'm homeless. My body's shutting down. I'm almost gonna like, no, I think I got everything. He's like, okay, so you got everything. So would it be fair to say that, or he said, did you attempt to destroy your life? Did you try to wreck everything? And I went, well, no. He said, so you tried to do good in your life, be successful, have a happy life, do good things, and yet you ended with everything a complete nightmare. Is that fair to say? I went, yeah. And he said, so would it be fair to say that your best thinking sucks? I went, yeah. Yeah. I can't find an argument for that.
No,
Like,
that just goes right down the logic trail right
Yeah.
there.
yeah, my best thinking sucks. And he goes,
Mhm.
okay, then stop depending on it. Do it my way for 3 months. And if at the end of that 3 months it doesn't work, I'll gladly refund your misery. And I
Perfect.
realized, I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. I'm not really risking anything. I'm already miserable. Like, what do I have to lose doing it somebody else's way for a little while? Like, if it doesn't work, I'm just end up back here, you know. And our ego combats us. They're like, oh, don't do that. Don't you might not like it if you do that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, but I already don't like my life now.
Yeah.
So what are you protecting me from? You know, like, 'cause that's your ego's actual main purpose, is to protect us. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why it comes in and says, oh, you might not want to do that. You might experience something you don't like. Like, yeah, but I already don't like my life. So
Yeah. How do you work on building people's awareness?
one of the big things is teaching them to appreciate it. Because what happens usually is once the light comes on, most people curse the darkness.
Mm.
You know, so once their awareness comes up, awareness basically is the awareness that you're doing something wrong. So once that awareness comes up, most people go, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing that. I was supposed to be doing this. It's so stupid that I fell back into my own ways and I'm doing the wrong thing now. And that's horrible. And negative feedback doesn't change negative behavior. You know, they've proven that scientifically. So only positive feedback changes negative behavior. So we're beating ourselves up, making ourselves feel bad because that's how we were trained to condition our behavior. You know, like all of society is set up that way. It's through punishment. You know, this is the parenting styles, the school styles, the police styles. Like, it's all based on punishment, but they've
Mm-hmm.
proven that doesn't work. So when we're beating ourselves up for having a moment of awareness, we have less moments of awareness, and we actually use it to drag ourselves down. So if you just start celebrating the awareness instead of going, oh no, I just realized I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing, and you go, oh my God, yay, I just had a moment of awareness, so now I can change that behavior. Because until you're aware, you have no hope of changing your behavior. You know,
So
you can go,
instead of looking at your failure as a defeat and recognizing that, well, by recognizing that, you basically flip it around and you kind of mess with your own head in a positive way.
yeah, you just we're like, there is no true or false. It's just our perception that determines that. So it's our choice how to determine. Like, beating yourself up it serves no purpose. It doesn't benefit you in any way. It actually lowers your energy, it lowers your self-esteem. You feel less capable of doing what you need to do because you just beat yourself up and told yourself you were no good and you weren't doing it right. But if you look at it and you go, okay, well, I was screwed until I had this moment of awareness because I had no hope of doing the right thing because I wasn't even aware I was doing the wrong thing. So this is wonderful. Now that I know this awareness arose, this was the gift. Now I can consciously choose to do the right thing and reinforce the behavior and the way of thinking that I want to move forward in my life with. So really celebrating the awareness instead of beating ourselves up over it is a big key to that.
Mm-hmm. And you seem like someone that doesn't pamper somebody either. You're just kind of like, this is how it is.
Yeah, no, I don't. It's
Yeah.
But that's part of the process. The way that I'm here to induce shifts to actually change people's lives, not to talk about it.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest ways that, like, when somebody hits a wall of pain, you know, my job is to hold them there. And it's really uncomfortable for them. And it's going to break one of two ways. They're either going to release all their resistance to what I'm saying and open up and transcend this issue,
Mm-hmm.
or they're going to double down on their protective nature, right?
Yeah.
And try to protect themselves from experiencing the pain that I'm holding them in.
Yeah.
And then usually they'll like blame me. It doesn't, it's only happened maybe like, I mean, with my clients, it doesn't happen often. With other people, it happens all the time. But I try not to do it to other people very often. It just comes up every once in a while. But a lot of people aren't ready to hear the truth out in the normal world. But with
Yeah.
my clients, it's only happened about 3 or 4 times over the last 12 years. And they just turn on me and they have to project it onto me that I'm the problem. And so they, oh, you don't know everything, and and they make me the problem, and then they shut down and stop working with me.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, like a year or 2 or 3 later, like I accept that and I know why they're doing it. I know it's not actually, even though they're projecting it at me, I know it's not about me. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine with that. And I don't defend, I don't get all angst up. And then what happens is if they wake up another 2, 3 years down the road and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, like Glenn was right. And then a lot of times they'll reach back out and start working with me again. They'll be like, I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't ready. And I'm like, I know, it's all right. You got to go back out there and suffer more sometimes
Sure.
until you've suffered enough where you're ready to actually accept the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that happens.
Yeah. So let's say someone says, "Hey, Glenn, I've been listening to your podcast. I'm loving it. I like your style. I want to grow spiritually, and I am a regular nicotine user. Using pot, marijuana, pretty regularly. I'm drinking pretty regularly. What are you gonna say to them?"
And I'll be
Um,
listening while he does that.
well, I mean, honestly, with that type of, I think it's a personal choice to some degree because just because like I was an alcoholic, so people think that I'm against alcohol and I'm not.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
like I completely transcended that. It's a complete non-issue. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
like the larvae stuff that's in the middle of a tomato, and I don't drink alcohol. And those two things are of equal importance to me. I
Okay.
don't- it just like I go years without remembering that I'm an alcoholic. It's a non-issue because I fully transcended it. I'm completely free of that. So I have no problem being around people drinking. I don't think that there's anything wrong with people who do drink.
Mm-hmm.
And same with weed and nicotine. It's like, hey, if you can function in your life and you're content and happy and you're doing those things, then I see no problem to try to stop it. But I mean, the reality is like any distraction, including drugs, alcohol, nicotine, any addictive thing, any distraction technique like watching TV, anything, what it does is we're trapped in the and I got this from Tolle many years ago. We're trapped in the line of thinking, incessant thinking, and this is what drains us. We're not supposed to be stuck there all day. That we don't have moments of stillness, of recuperation. We're just constantly going busy, distracting ourselves. So when we take drugs, alcohol, television, it drops us below the level of thinking and quiets a section of our mind.
Okay.
So that's why people do it, right? They're like, oh my God, I'm stressed out. I'm just going to zone out, watch some TV. And it gives the illusion of disconnecting from that line of thinking. But what it is it drops us below our natural state, which is unnatural. It's not natural for us to be less than ourselves. It's not natural for us to dumb our senses down by, things or watching things or behaviors. So and we don't recuperate that way. So what we need to do is learn to rise above the level of thinking. And that is how once we learn, meditation, being still, just sitting there feeling connection to something bigger than us. That's when we actually recover. And like they've shown the numbers vary from study to study, but they've shown that 20 minutes of meditation is equal to anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of sleep as far as mental and bodily recuperation. So it's much more powerful than sleep to recuperate. And we don't do that. I got custody of my son when he was 12 and was starting my business and all this stuff. And I was so busy, and I was so stressed out and I was meditating regularly, but it was just so much that I cleared my schedule one weekend, and he went and stayed with some friends, and I just watched movies and ate pizza all weekend. And I noticed Monday, as soon as I woke up and started working, I was just as stressed as I was Friday night. And I realized I hadn't recuperated over that weekend. I just distracted myself, So then I started consciously using my driving in the car or anytime I could find downtime to really just practice stillness and just be. And I noticed I could handle my stresses a lot more. My body and my mind were actually recuperating instead of just being distracting.
What kind of practice would that be? Because that's a cool thing. Because Jim helped me out with this months and months ago, as far as putting. Because I used to just live at a constant level of high stress, and just thought that was just the way it was. I always had that belly tightness, and my blood pressure was high, and but I started doing that. Like some breathing work that Jim taught me while driving. So and that helped and still does. I still use that quite a bit. But what does that look like to you when you were putting that in practice? Is that like shutting off the radio, just focusing straight ahead, 12 o'clock and 10 and 4 on the wheel? Or what does that mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, I have to remind like this, I started doing this, I don't know, at least 12 years ago, maybe more. And I have to remind myself to this day to put the radio on if I want it, because like I've driven in silence for so long, and I still prefer it now. Which was I remember when I was in my 20s, my something happened with my radio, and I had to drive from Sarasota to St. Pete to get it fixed for some reason. And I almost lost my mind. I mean, I remember coming back and telling my friends, like, guys, I just drove 45 minutes without a stereo. Have you ever done anything like that? I wanted to climb out of my skin. Like I was driving myself crazy. I was like, I couldn't stand the energy inside of myself, And now I much prefer it. So, but for me, ADHD mind and all this stuff, I don't really have that much luck. I mean, I can, but I don't have as much luck as maybe other people stilling my mind. So I just don't worry about what my mind's doing. To me, I'm very feeling type person. So if I put my focus on my my heart area, and just with the intention of just being still or connecting to my source, very quickly I feel like this pleasurable sensation. Some people might feel it contentment, call it contentment or peace or joy or bliss or whatever you want to call it. There's some sort of pleasurable sensation that I'm feeling in my chest. Like I'm feeling it right now just talking about it. That's what I focus on. Like whenever I'm doing my meditation or I want to have a moment of stillness or something, because if once I connect to that, and just use a portion of my consciousness to make sure that I stay there, then I'm connected to source. And that's our source of energy, our source of recuperation, our source of love, our source of abundance, our source of everything. So once I'm connected to that, the rest automatically, the recuperation takes care of itself. And sometimes I'll even practice doing it in everyday things like washing the dishes or brushing my teeth or taking a shower. It's like, can I move without losing that feeling of connection? So be like, oh, I'm going to try to brush my teeth. Okay, there's that feeling. And now I reach for the toothbrush. I lost it. Okay, just reach for the toothbrush slower. Reconnect. Okay, I got the toothbrush. Okay, now the toothpaste. I lost it. Okay, reconnect. Now the toothpaste. Okay, now, oh, I put it on and I didn't even lose the connection. Okay, now I'm going to move a little faster without, oh, I lost it. Okay, reconnect. Like, and I'll literally do that, in different life experiences. And it teaches me not all, while I'm doing it, it keeps me connected, but it also trains my body to stay connected while I'm interacting with life in different ways too.
Well, it's just that you just take a different avenue, which is interesting. I'd never even considered that before. Like when you're sitting meditating, if you're doing guided, it's always, hey, if your mind wanders, bring your mind back, to the third eye, get that going. And I find that difficult too, because when you're explaining yourself and your ADHD and your crazy head, that's me. I mean, that really is. So I'm really taking these points as, like I'm going to put that in practice because when you sit and meditate, and I don't do it as often as I should, but I do have trouble with just wandering. But if you could take
Yeah.
that into every day, to the toothpaste thing, or putting coffee in the coffee maker and keeping in that same place, those routine things, if you can go there, and then it's almost like Pavlov, right? You train
Right.
yourself to be there at that situation, so if you put that in practice, you're going to get there when you're in those situations.
Yeah, I actually did that like years ago. When I was busy, I was having trouble sleeping, and I had heard that you can train your mind not to think in certain areas. So I started playing around with it. So like every time I walked through the threshold of my bedroom, or laid down, if I started thinking about anything, I was like, this is a no thinking zone. Like the only thing that happens in my bedroom is sleep and sex. That's it. Like, so I'm not allowed to think in there. And then after a couple weeks, I was doing something, in the middle of the day. I'm, maybe bringing some laundry or something into my bedroom, and I'm thinking about something, and I crossed the threshold, and all of a sudden my mind went
It just
blank,
shut off.
and I was like, "What? What was I? What just happened? Like what?" What am I doing? Why is my mind blank? What was I thinking about? And it dawned on me. I was like, oh, I just entered the non-thinking zone. I was like, and my brain just automatically just stopped. So yeah, there's another spiritual law. Everything, everything that we resist persists because we're energy. Everything is energy. So if we're pushing against something, we're actually feeding it energy. So that's why a lot of times when people are meditating and they're trying to resist their mind, they're actually feeding the fact that their mind's racing, or that they have thoughts. So, like when we're meditating, it's not a problem if we go, oh, I have to stop at the grocery store after work. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And people will break their meditation and go, oh no, I let a thought come in. I'm doing it wrong. And thoughts pass through like clouds all the time. There's no problem with a thought passing by. The problem is when we latch onto it and it pulls us out of our peace. So we go, oh, I have to stop by the grocery store later. I wonder if they're going to have broccoli. They were out yesterday. And I don't know. And then that cashier was a jerk last time I went. And then that pulls us out, but just a random thought passing through, who cares? It's just let it. So that's why I don't try to control my mind. The more I try to control it, the more out of control it is because I'm putting energy towards it being out of control. So I don't even know half the time I don't even know if I've been thinking or not. Like when I'm in a meditation afterwards, I don't like if somebody said, did you have thoughts? I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to them. Probably.
Yeah, the mind is a random thought generator for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned stillness earlier, and one of the things I learned through the yoga practice is that our body is never still. Like we think we're still in sleep, but we're moving and twitching, we're dreaming and we're moving. And so our motor neurons throughout the body never get a chance to really rest and reset like you were talking about. So the practice at the end of the yoga class of samadhi, or not samadhi, of final relaxation, where we lay back on the mat and practice stillness. I mean, that's an art, not to move your body. And if you do it long enough, those motor neurons will shut down and quit firing. And like you talked about meditation being equivalent to sleep, that stillness is also, like 10 minutes of stillness is equivalent to, like an hour of sleep because we don't do it. And when those motor neurons really get a chance to shut down, you really feel the rejuvenation. And it's the way you can test if you got there is if you tell your like fingers to touch, and if there's a delay between the thought and the movement, because all of a sudden all those neurons have to fire, you've done it.
Yes.
But it is a practice. Stillness is very difficult for some people.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's very difficult because of the way we live, the social conditioning and that we're moving too fast. Like Yogananda came to the United States to teach spirituality in 1920. And he said that that the biggest detriment to teaching people was that they were moving too fast in their lives. They couldn't slow down enough to take in the spiritual lessons. And that was in 1920.
Yeah.
Like we're doing 120 miles an hour faster than we were, 100 years ago. So yeah, it's that stillness is extremely important, and there's different ways of practicing it. And it's shavasana is that's what it is, right?
Yeah, shavasana.
Shavasana, man, like when I take a yoga class, it's like shavasana. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till we get there. That's my sweet spot. Like, but yeah, I think it's actually natural for us to be still. It's just we've conditioned ourselves for decades to not be still. Right. So it's like, I mean, is it so like when I hear it's difficult, I look at it two ways, it's like, is it difficult? Yes. Yes, I understand that it's difficult because we're not used to doing it. But I like making the clarity that it's not difficult because it's hard for us to do. It's actually very simple for us to do. It's actually easier than we think. And in fact, like in my book, I talk about, like, I have a chapter on spiritual terms. Spiritual terms, if you look at them, they all imply non-efforting. Like spiritual terms are like remember, forget, like things like that. Like, so go into a corner and try to remember real hard. How's that going to work? It's not, and everybody knows this because they're like, oh, who sings that song? Who sings that song? I'll stop thinking about it and it'll come to me.
Right.
Right. So that's it's this movement. It's actually our natural way of being is being still. We just need to allow ourselves to do it. Most people try too hard. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to be still. They're trying to meditate. They're efforting. And when you effort, what happens is efforting causes constriction. And there's, we live in a world of duality. So there's either flow or constriction. So when we're trying real hard, we're like, oh, I'm gonna go get this done, and I'm gonna really try. And if you pay attention to your body language, you're constricting, you're tightening, and there's no flow. But if we just relax and open, now there's complete relaxation and flow and effortlessness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, why so many people have a problem with it. It's not technically because it's difficult. It's actually very easy and very natural for us. It's just people are caught up in trying to do it instead of relaxing into it.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
think that, and yesterday when we were talking to Michelle Lovett, uh, we talked for quite a bit about kids and teenagers being literally addicted to their iPads, their phones. So
Hmm.
in that situation, and what made me think of it is that you just said, "Hey, we're supposed to be naturally still." Well, 30 years ago, when you went there, even 20 years ago, when you laid down in bed at night, you didn't have the phone next to you. You couldn't
Right.
be scrolling until you fell asleep at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night. You didn't have any of that. I've always needed that external source, and I remember we're cousins, by the way, and
Okay.
our grandmother going to sleep listening to the West Coast Tiger games on her little transistor radio under her pillow. I inherited that, and then so when phones came up, I mean, I'm going to sleep every night with listening to a podcast or listen to that, and I think that since you said, and I agree with this, I never thought about it though. If you're supposed to be naturally still, like we were for generations until 20 years ago in the digital age, or 30 years now, it doesn't happen anymore. So when you want to get someone trained, so someone comes up to you that's 25 years old and says, "Hey, Glenn, I'm having this issue. I can't quiet my mind." And so that's, I mean, they are a huge disadvantage because they've had this digital stimulation now 20 somethings for their entire lives.
Yeah, but they don't have as much conditioning. And conditioning is really the problem. So like if you do something for 50 years, like and I, it's kind of like the frog in the pot. Like, so like if you put a frog in a pot of hot water, it jumps out. But if you put a frog in a pot of water, which I try never to do this, but if you put put a frog in a pot of cold water and then turn up the heat gradually to a boil, it'll stay in there and die. So like so the conditioning over years, little by little by little by little, it becoming our norm is over 50 years. For me, it's harder to break somebody uh, of their way of life that they've created over 50 years than to for somebody that's young. And plus the people that are young, like I truly believe we're in the middle of a spiritual shift happening on the planet.
I agree with
And
you 100%.
so to part of that is different generations coming in more spiritual than the previous one. So when I work with kids, and I do sometimes, it's usually easier because they don't have 40 years of conditioning. Like they're just still trying to figure out how to handle life, especially if they're in their early 20s or their teens. They're still creating some of their belief systems on an unconscious level. I mean, most of them are by the time we're eight, but like they're still creating this stuff and they're more malleable, So it's like that they're like, well, I thought life was this way. It's like, no, it's this way. Oh, okay, it's this way. They don't have so much years of resistance built up against that, thinking, no, this is the way it is. No, this is. So yeah, I find it easier to work
Hmm.
with younger people to shift them. They have
That
been
makes
exposed to it their whole life, but they're more malleable and more open.
no, that makes sense. I didn't even think of it from that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned Yogananda. He was, back in 1985, 1986, I went into a metaphysical bookstore to get some stuff on being successful. And here's this picture of Yogananda on the cover of his book, Autobiography of a Yogi, staring at me. And
It draws you in, doesn't
it
it?
drew me in, man. And I forgot about all the successful stuff and left with that book. And man, that just sent me on the whole yoga journey. So yeah, what a
Yeah.
great teacher he was.
Oh my God, amazing. That's such a mind expanding book, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
like you start learning about a lot of things that exist that we didn't even know existed. Like,
Yeah.
people that live for 40 years without eating or sleeping,
Yeah.
and we're like,
How?
how is that possible? Right.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, not sleeping is because they learned how to recuperate in another way, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not eating, they learned to generate energy through source
Mhm.
and that around them instead of through food.
Yeah.
Like, so it's really hard when you're first exposed to that to believe that it's even possible, but it is. And
Yeah.
it's so I love the mind expanding because then to me it opens up the playground, you know,
Right.
like
And you're not
that
stuck in the
anything is
box.
possible. Yeah,
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen next, and I'm not trying to control it because I would cut myself short because I can't even comprehend what's possible. So I'm just going to open and go, and
Yeah.
that's how I like walking the path.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's so cool.
Well, you've inspired me to take this and pull up Eckhart Tolle and listen to it another time now, because I probably get a lot more out of it now than I did 5 or 6 years ago.
And I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
the
true.
thing.
Go ahead.
But that's with any spiritual text. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because you're not open to certain things, and then you open up a little bit, and then you read something again or hear something again, and now you're more open to it, and you're going, "Oh yeah, I didn't even catch that." Like the Bhagavad Gita, I've probably read that 20 some times, and every single time I reread it, I learn, something else hits me, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow, I didn't even realize this was in here. It's like I wasn't open to it at
It's
that point.
No, and that happens to me. I mean, I've recently started being a daily Bible reader, and then it's so fun that when I go to church on Sunday, where if there would have been uh, a mention of this verse and this explanation of what this means, or 6 months ago, I wouldn't. It would went over my head. But now I've read it and I listen to it in my car, and when you hear it the third or fourth time, you get bitch slapped. I mean, there's
yeah.
eventually that bitch slap moment when you're gonna that aha moment, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
and
That spiritual
you,
punch in the face.
it does
Yeah.
happen. It does happen, and you just don't know what it is. And as we're having this discussion, I'm thinking about several of those that I've had in just the past few months, and so yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a
You made me think of a way different way to look at things.
oh, nice. That's what it's all about. A
Hmm.
spiritual awakening is simply a shift of perspective. That was something that I found out early on. Like when I first started in recovery, they haven't changed the first like 164 pages or something, I think. That's all the program of recovery. They haven't changed it since it was written in 1939. The back of the book is all stories. Sometimes they'll update those. So they didn't change it, but what they did do is they decided that there was a couple things that they should add after it came out. So they put an appendices in the back. And one of the things that they added is called spiritual experience. And they said, even though that this wasn't our intention, a lot of people got the idea that you had to have this overwhelming God consciousness take you over in order to get sober. And that is not our intention at all. Whenever we're talking about, an awareness or some sort of spiritual shift happening, all we're talking about is a shift of perspective, a shift of perception, a way of looking at something differently than it was before. That's what a spiritual awakening is. And I knew nothing about spirituality. So I read that, like right in the beginning, and I was like, oh, okay. So when I was 6, I looked at certain things one way. By the time I was 15, I had changed my perception of certain things. By the time I was 25, I had changed my perception of things. So it's just a different way of looking at things. It's just a different perception. Now all of a sudden it became possible because me having a spiritual awakening, like I didn't know if there was a God, but if there was, the only thing I knew about him is that he freaking hated me. That was it. Like, that was my mentality back then. So expecting to have a spiritual awakening that ain't gonna happen. But once I was like, oh no, it's just a different way of looking at things, then that opened me up to the possibility, because we have free will. If we're closed off to something, it can't happen even if it's trying to.
Right.
So that's why opening is so important. So once I was like, oh, it's just a different way of looking at things, that I can
And
comprehend. I might be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
and I know you've heard the term, the destination is the journey, but it really is. The journey is really the destination. Those
Yeah.
aha moments, those moments because it's all baby steps.
Hmm.
At least it is for me. It's all baby
Yeah,
steps,
absolutely.
and when you've walked a mile, baby step, and there's going to be one more baby step after that. It's just never going to end.
Yeah. The attachment to an outcome puts off our happiness. Like when we're focused on a destination, non-attachment to an outcome is another spiritual law. So it's like, we put, oh, I want to be spiritual, and I have to do these things to become spiritual. Well, to become happy. Well, you just pushed it out into the future. There is no happiness in the future. Nothing happens in the future. When it does happen, it's the now, back to Tolle. So it's like the only thing we have is right now. We don't have to wait until we finish some spiritual walk. I still have more stuff to learn, but I'm not going to wait until I learn it to experience peace, contentment, and happiness. That's a daily choice. I get to choose to do that today, now, to the best of my ability. And yeah, I'll have more epiphanies and it'll get better. But yeah, there is no destination. It's all in a series of moments.
Mm-hmm.
And
And when you take things in from different angles, you talk to people like you talk to listen to other podcasters, my pastor at church. I get these same messages from different sources coming at me, but the resolution is all it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It's like the same. I'm teaching the same stuff Jesus was teaching,
Right.
and
There's no
Muhammad was
Right.
teaching, and it's
Right.
all the
It's
same
just
stuff. It's
different
nothing
ways to
new.
look at it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And
Yeah.
if you want to get closer to the truth, you simplify. You want to get further from the truth, you complicate.
Yeah.
So as you start understanding things, everything gets simpler and simpler and
it
simpler.
really
And
does. That's
yeah,
so
and it's
true.
very basic. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, like, yeah, this is the same stuff.
And
It's
when you
just,
realize it's basic, it's just hard to get rolling, and it doesn't get you up to you don't go 0 to 60 like that. And when you're talking about this kind of stuff, and I'm sure it's different for different folks and depend on their situation, whether you're like the situation you were in, which was kind of rock bottom, or just somebody who was just treading water their whole life and now just wants to go to the next level. You got to be something more, and it there's just different ways to get there, and the more different inputs you can get from as many different positive sources and surround yourself with those good. And I saw some of your podcasts was on manifestation. I didn't listen to it, but I'm going to. And that was like one of the most top 10 Googled terms last year.
Manifestation.
that's why I did that podcast. It was the number one. It was labeled the number one word of 2024 by like Cambridge Dictionary or something.
Yeah.
I was like, I was thinking about that. I'm like, I bet you manifest is like the most. So that's why I did my podcast, because in my opinion, most people misunderstand it. They don't, because basically why is manifest the number one word? Right. Well, partially because there's a
because it's
spiritual shift.
magic. Because it's magic. That's why.
Because people want what they want.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what people are doing when they're manifesting something. They're trying to get what they want.
right. But I think, well, no, we could go into this for another hour because really, I look at it, I believe in it for certain, that the more you can create those positive thoughts, those positive energies, those positive images in your mind, the more positive you will get in your life back. And I think that's where, and you said there's a spiritual transformation going on across the world, and especially in Western culture, which I also believe. Those two things have to be connected, because if people are looking at these positive manifestations in their lives, and more people are getting turned on to that, that will automatically take that to that direction.
Right. And which is what I like my way of expressing that same thought is, or I think it's the same thought, we'll see, is that it's a doorway. Like, and yoga, I believe, is another example of that. I mean, most people that I know that are truly into yoga and really love and respect it, can be slightly, at least, concerned by the watering down of it in developed countries like the United States,
Sure.
and it losing its real meaning, right? So to me, what's happening in the spiritual shift is we need to expose people to spirituality. We need to get them in the door. And if them going to yoga class and the first time they ever experience peace inside themselves is during Shavasana afterwards, that's a whole ton. That's hundreds of millions of people that have experienced peace inside of themselves that have never experienced it before. That helps. That gets them in the doorway.
Yeah.
So I believe that a lot manifestation. It's a doorway. It's just getting people interested that positivity might they might be able to get what they want. And why do people want to get what they want? Because they think if they get what they want, they'll be happy.
Right.
Right. So people are seeking happiness. They just haven't drawn a line to it. They don't know how to do it. So now they're getting into manifestation. And you can't throw a stick without hitting 13 manifesting teachers. So like they're everywhere. Why does not everybody on the planet have what they want by now? Or at least the
Because you
gigantic
have to be
percentage.
grateful before you can you have to be grateful for what you have.
I feel like there's a misunderstanding about manifestation.
I do too.
I feel like
agree.
everything we are right now, we've manifested.
Right.
We've manifested this life that we've created. We do it through our thoughts daily. And we're thinking, oh, we got to do something special to manifest. You're already manifesting. Everything you are right now, everything you have, everything you've done, everything you are, you've manifested. Okay? So if you don't like what you are, if you don't like what you don't have, it's your own fault. You got to accept that. And the way to change things is to manifest something different within you. You have to change your own thoughts. You have to change your own way of being, your own energy, because nothing's going to, like you said, it's not magic.
It's not.
It's work.
Yeah.
And you're either working in a good way or you're working in a shitty way. And if you don't like your life and what you become, you've been working in a shitty way.
No, actually, I did say manifesting is magic.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, because it kind of,
it seems like it.
In this point, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
No, you're 100% right. You have to recognize that you're screwed up and just make a decision to change.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of different avenues to get there. But starting with just the positivity, to turn off the negative and turning on the positive is the number.
Yeah, and I think
the number one thing.
Well, like what I'm getting from you guys is that you guys have a healthy understanding of manifesting, which a lot of people don't, I feel, because this, like the way we're thinking is, does that manifest where we are now? Yes, I believe it does. Do we have to take radical responsibility for our lives, be honest with ourselves and make that adjustment? Yes, I believe we do. But to me, my thing is just going deeper, man. I just love going deeper. So when I look at manifestation, I'm just going to walk that all the way down to the depth. And it's like, so to me, manifestation is one of the reasons why it's so erratic and people can't quite get really good at it and consistent with it, like with big things, like a new job, a new house, and a new car, millions of dollars, whatever, is because it's coming from an egoic space. Right. So like to me, and I actually got a manifesting course with Tole years ago, because I was like, I have my belief system on this and it's a little different than most. So I was like, I bet you Tole gets it. So I get into his program, and sure enough, right in the beginning, he said his version of it. And basically he's like, if you really want to manifest well, what you need to do is connect to source. We're not manifesting anything. We don't manifest. We don't have the power to manifest anything. To me, and then, like my way of phrasing it is like we're like a flashlight, an empty flashlight, no batteries. We have the housing, we're the casing, we're the channel in which light can come through. We can direct it with the head of the flashlight, focus in on one thing, broaden it, but we are not the power. The power that actually manifests things is source that comes through us and manifests things. So the more we're connected to source, the more consistent our manifesting is going to be.
I would argue that those batteries are already in there, and that by connecting to source or God or whatever your higher power is, you can unleash that energy inside yourself. That is already there. So yeah, you can take your life and change the flashlight and the focus and change the bulb, and nothing will work without that energy source. But it is already inside you.
I mean, we do have a finite amount of energy inside of us.
Be
and this is just my perspective.
We might be splitting hairs on this because I'm thinking more from a more abstract source, I guess. But
yeah, and it's fine to have, there's nothing wrong with having slightly different perspectives that resonate. Right. If it resonates with you, then that's good. Like I think that's a big delusion in society right now that we're all supposed to agree, which I don't know where the hell we got that idea. We're all individuals. We're not supposed to.
If we're not on the same page, we're done. No, nothing like that.
So yeah, it's just, like whether we need to replenish our energy through source, but we already have a certain amount, that might be another way to look at it. But the other thing that it does my focus is connecting to source, not getting something that I want for my happiness. I believe connecting to source creates my happiness, not getting what I want. So if my primary is connecting to source, what happens is when I start, I don't generally want to manifest anything because I'm really good, right? Like at first, like if before I'm connected to source, I really wanted a Maserati, and then I connect to source, I go, oh, well, I have source, like that's way better than a Maserati, so I don't really need the Maserati, so I guess I don't really even need to manifest it. So a lot of the things that are egoic wants just kind of disappear, and we decide we don't really want them anymore. Then we're left with heartfelt desires. Those things I believe were meant to manifest. So our real heartfelt desires, things that will enhance the earth, things that are bigger, purpose driven, stuff like that. And that, now all of a sudden we're taking the energy from source and focusing it on something that's going to be an expression of source and better the world. And it's just so much more powerful. And when you're in alignment with that, it's so much more fulfilling. And that to me is the way to manifest. If I'm going to spend my time manifesting, who gives a crap if I, get $10,000? And I mean, even if I need it, would I rather have $10,000 or change the world? The 10,000 will come, if I'm changing the world.
Sure. Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this is we're just getting ramped up and we're 90 minutes in. We gotta go. But
this has been great,
Glenn, this has really been a good conversation, man. Yeah. I know I speak for Jim. I'd love to have you back again and do another one of these because it just started getting good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a blast, man. This is my thing. This is why I'm doing it all these years later, because you can, if anybody puts their attention on my energy right now, it's jacked, I'm up, I'm having a blast. I'm excited. I'm loving the topics. And that's really how I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, is that my energy goes up. It doesn't go down, So yeah, I love it. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'd, be happy to come back.
Awesome.
Great. But yeah, this was amazing. This is my favorite conversation, spirituality.
Oh, nice. Well, That's a compliment. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're a great guest. We'd love to have you back. And thanks so much again for being here.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you, guys.
So if you just listen to this podcast and you appreciate the content and the work that we're doing, we would love your support. Look in the comment section of this episode. Subscribe, rate us, comment. This gets our podcast in front of other listeners. And if you noticed, we don't have advertisers. For the cost of a cup of coffee, you can help keep it this way. Become a supporter right now. We'd appreciate it. I'm Jim the Yogi.
I'm Rick the BeachMan.